Welcome to the Customer Experience 404, episode number 4. This is the episode with Russel Lolacher, who is the Web and Social Media Director for the British Columbia Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, as well as creator and moderator of the blog at the Upsell. Welcome to the CX404 zone. My name is Andrew Mayer of Service Please, as well as at Service Please 20 over on Twitter, where you can discuss with me everything about digital customer experience. This is the show where we talk to people and companies working on improving the customer experience, where we bring them out from behind the curtains and give them a chance to share their secret hot sauce, their recipes of success. Our interview partner today is Russel Lolacher of the Upsell, who believes what better way to entice your customers to spend more and build a relationship for long-term patronage than with great customer service. This show was recorded on Saturday, the 23rd of February, 2013. Okay, thank you for taking your time out of your day and joining Customer Experience 404.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm stoked. I'm so excited that you decided to invite me here today.
I have to start the show with a little bit of a preface and explain a little bit to some of my few listeners. Actually, I'm really surprised with the number of people that have followed my few shows so far, but are asking me some really interesting questions that I just take for granted and didn't think about, and wonder about why I'm doing all this. So I have two questions that came in from friends through Facebook and one through an email to me today. He said, what is this podcasting all about, and why am I talking about this CX404? And it seemed that I've been talking to companies, corporations, mid-size companies for almost 20 years about the customer experience and customer services, how to improve them, how to manage them, how to optimize them on a one-to-one basis. And I've had, I think pretty good success in my career doing that. But I feel there's so much more that needs to be said. And as my social media handle, my Service Please 20 moniker on Twitter says, the 2020 means, and it says in my bio, by the year 2020 was what I'd set out was a 10-year plan. I wanted to improve the customer experience as far as I could get. And I realized talking one-to-one to companies was just not going to be fast enough. So I thought podcasting, which seemed like a regular place for me to go because I listen to a lot of podcasts, would be a place I could get out and talk to a broader audience. But of course, in bringing people from around the world that I meet and I work with and I exchange ideas with around the world. And I thought, let's try podcasting. So that was the answer to the first question. And the second one I had was, how do I find these people? This one I actually didn't expect to get, but it came from a business partner that I met earlier this week. Says, where do I find all these crazy people to come on my podcast? And I have to confess to my family and friends here, Russel and I, we've had an on and off again Twitter relationship for almost 3 years. And up until this week, we had only ever tweeted with one another, and we finally have now migrated to email. I'm not sure if that's the right direction, but that's where we get here, and that's why we've got Russel on the show today. We're really happy to have him here, and being from Canada, we've got last week we had David McQuillan from Melbourne, Australia, coming in and through his Asian connections here. Welcome, Russel, and maybe you could start off and tell us a little bit about you yourself, your experience, and how you got into all this customer service interest.
Well, thanks. The blog has been going on for about since 2009. Previous to that, my experience has been basically involved in the customer service industry. I was working in the service industry for, I would say, 15 years. There's been other components of it, call centers. I feel like everything's pretty much built from everything else. I now, as a director of basically engagement online, and there's a lot that we do that does not involve social media. I feel like the skills that I've sort of built from my previous life, and I'm including like being a bartender and just being face to face with people, interacting with them on a human level, has helped me exponentially in having some opinion or thought leadership, I guess, around customer service. The upsell really came from whatever girl I was dating at the time was getting really annoyed at me every time we were in a restaurant or anywhere, and I'd be like, I can't believe they didn't do that. Oh, I can't believe they did this. Oh, that was a really good move. And they're like, could you just just do it and just sort of go through the experience that we're having and not talk about it. I'm like, fine, I'll write it down. And it's sort of grown from there. I've had a lot of success, and surprisingly so, I feel, from the upsell, and here I am today, sort of thing. So yeah, communications has been key to my passion for customer service, I guess.
It's funny. You and I share a bit of the same illness as some people in my family and relatives say, that we perhaps overanalyze every interaction we have with others, and I end up watching people in supermarket lines who are in front of me interacting with the cashiers and the others, thinking how that could have been handled better or differently, more quickly, or whatever it might be. And it's something that I guess we just bring to the table, and we easily can see these things. Translating those into plans and objectives for companies to focus on is, of course, a challenge. Getting them to address them and to see them as valuable, and that they need to actually spend some time, some effort to address those situations, because it's not just the one interaction that you might have seen in the restaurant with your girlfriend at the time that went wrong. It's probably happening over and over and over again. And that's affecting the broader customer experience that's going on there. So having those conversations with the companies, blogging about it, now maybe podcasting about it, trying to get the story out to others to see that these are really important interactions. But I'm wondering nowadays, do companies really think they need to pay attention to the customer? I mean, the proliferation of where you can source a product. You can go online, you can order it from A, B, or C today. You can go down the shops, and everybody's selling something similar to the other one there, and the price might be more or less the same. Do you think companies today are really actually going to pay attention and realize that they need to offer a really good customer service?
They just have to. Unfortunately, what they may not realize is that though their customers might not be on, say, Twitter, Facebook, or any online properties, but at the same time, people aren't necessarily on those networks, but they do use Google. And there are websites like Yelp, for example, or other review sites where your search results around your business are being impacted by what that one person said that one time, and that you've not paid any attention to, not addressed. So it just sits there and it festers, and it doesn't help you get new business. And you may, if you're not paying attention, do not know how to address those negative reviews or those negative comments. Companies have never been part of the conversation, and those conversations are happening and have been happening forever. What they have to understand is the value of being in those conversations. It's like not being the cool kid at the party, because if you don't go to the party, you don't know what's going on, and then you can't feel included. And I think companies need to humanize themselves a lot more and think about it in human terms, a lot less in them versus us terms.
All right. You brought in, I mean, talking about some of the aspects that come into when companies are going to try to interact with their customers, whether, as I like to call it, the analog world or the digital world. So the analog being in the restaurant, in the store, dealing with the shop worker, not often the owner nowadays, the person working behind the counter, or online with companies. You posted a blog post this week, which when I was preparing for the interview today, actually I was looking at a post previously that you had out there, but this one popped up and it just came across the desk at the same time that I was working on a model that has to do taking in the context, so the contextual portions, what plays a role when a company sees a customer coming at them to looking for an answer, looking for has a problem or something there. What plays a role? What is the whole context here? So as an example, person calling the telephone company with a problem. The company obviously should know who's calling them if they're using their phone. If it's not the phone outage problem there, but they should know who's calling. Of course, they know when the person's calling. It plays probably a role if they're calling at 3 a.m. or if they're calling at 9 o'clock in the morning. All these things they need to know to understand how they need to match the person, the questions that the responder, the agent in a call center is going to ask here. But there's other questions like, where are they calling from, right? If it's a mobile call and they're coming across the network, the companies could know where this person is currently here. Are they in the car, on the road? Are they actually at their house? Important as well is, what are others saying at the same time, of not about this person, or are you getting 20 calls of related issues coming in here? I worked with a company in Norway it's a telecoms company that knows when lightning crosses Norway, all of the ADSL modems have to be reset. So they have a map on the wall with the live lightning map. The agents in the call center could look on the wall and they see the map. It's storming coming in from the west there, and they expect a whole lot of calls coming in for that. So knowing what others are saying around it, but the real question is if you can know why the person's calling before or contacting you, why are they here before you even go and approach them with the first question or the welcome, how can I help you here? If you could get all this information together here, and most of it is available, you could treat that customer in their situation, in the context that they find themselves at the moment. So that's what I've been working on for the last few weeks here. Then your situational awareness came across my desk, and I thought, I need to understand a bit more. Maybe you could share with us, what more would the situational awareness bring into that kind of model? What could it add to this contextual conversation?
Yeah, I did a little bit of research about this on situational awareness, because I know it's been prevalent in my worlds of customer service, is that people seem to be living too much in their bubbles. Whether that's the cashier on the other side of the counter, whether that's the server that's passing your desk, it could even be online as well. But you have to better understand what's going on around you. It's not just about you. Oh, we've got some puppy action happening there. Sorry, a little barking.
No problem.
But needless to say, situational awareness, and I sort of broke it down in my blog around being emotional, physical, and sort of spiritual. And I mean that in the sense that emotional is understanding who you're talking to. And we get really right back to the point of, you're talking to a human being. Are they mad? Are they upset? Is there something to infer for the fact that this might not be about the situation? Maybe it's something personally that's happening to them, and that's fueling the emotion of how they talk to you. Physical, is there something you could possibly be doing that would enhance the customer experience, that to them would be something small and they would have never thought about? That they're focused on themselves, and they should be, but you should be working around them to better serve them. From a more spiritual standpoint, I'm looking at it more from a look at yourself, understand yourself better. Will you be making the situation worse by doing this or that? Will you impact other customers by helping this customer? I use the example of, say you're in line at the cashier at a store that you drove to interact with the customer service there, and they pick up the phone and start talking to another customer who didn't drive all the way there, and have that face-to-face engagement, but they're taking the priority to talk to that person and not you, who's standing right there. Right away, that's disrespecting the person that made the effort to build the relationship with you one-on-one, as opposed to the person that couldn't take the time to get in their car, or in any way. Maybe it's resourcing. Maybe you need to have another person answering phones while the other person's interacting with people in the store. Maybe it's a matter of just picking up the phone, going, "I'll be with you in a moment. I'm serving somebody at this time." But you really have to understand the situation you're in. I use the example in my blog about how many times have you gone up to a cashier? And this usually happens to me at coffee shops. I don't know why, but somebody will be working the cashier register or doing whatever they're doing, and I really can't tell from where I am, and they seem suddenly surprised when they look up to see me, which I've been standing there for about a minute. They're not understanding their environment. Their environment is to serve the customer, not pick away at whatever they're doing. And it's so easy to address that. It could be just looking up and smiling and say, "You know what, I'll be with you in one moment." Acknowledgement does an amazing job at diffusing situations, making my emotional level stay pretty even keel. But it's such the small things that people don't understand. I think situational awareness, the better you understand your environment yourself, the better your customer service will be.
That's right. So you brought it up earlier. So the examples of the cashier behind the counter at the coffee shop, there's some easy behavioral things that could be taught there that are just human. It's not even really customer service, just human, acknowledging people in front of you, whether they're there to serve you and you're as a customer, or you're just standing in line next to somebody. I think maybe there's a lot of basic skills that perhaps some of us have not learned or not practicing much anymore generally. But you brought it up earlier. Um, how 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 can this be delivered? How could you deliver good customer service in social media? So, or in the online world. So you're going to be missing a lot of those triggers. You know, you're not seeing the person behind the counter, in this case, behind the keyboard at the company you're tweeting at, or you've put it on their TripAdvisor, or whatever tool you might be using to communicate, or sending an email even at them. So you can't really see them. Do you think that good customer service can really be delivered to via social media?
Absolutely. And I find that really funny when I hear that from companies to say, can that actually happen? I'm sure people said, can we deliver good customer service when the phone was invented? This is really no different than that. It is two people or multiple people using technology to communicate to one another. That's all it is. People need to take the technology out of it and realize that it's just two people talking to each other. Uh, Social media is perfect that way. The only difference is you're doing it. Your conversation is happening in front of the world, not necessarily just between you and I on a closed channel. Where if things go badly, people could just tell their friends or write a firm letter back to the company. No, if they're upset, they're going to go write a blog and they're going to impact your SEO and they're going to impact their friends who will also write and blog and video about it. So it's these little ripples in a pond that can really impact you. Social media again is not about the technology. It is very much about the people. Um, I've had two really good experiences lately of checking things out, and I will mention that it's about listening is
Mm.
probably the most prevalent, and that goes back to the situational awareness. Understand what people are talking about you, and you'll know which issues you're addressing, and so nothing will be a surprise because you'll be already aware of a lot of the things that are already maybe an issue around your product.
So
The one I did a blog recently about Microsoft versus Twitter. I had certainly had a stupid move, bonehead move on my part. I had an old Hotmail account, one I'd set up, I don't know, 10 years ago.
before the
Didn't know
internet, right?
before the internet. I think there was
Right.
a hamster in a wheel at the time that was fueling it. Ask.com and ICQ. Yeah, it was an old time. And I stupidly had forgot my password, but that Hotmail account was set up to my Twitter account. So if anything bad had happened, I would not have been able to fix anything. And this was a pretty prevalent Twitter account. So I contacted Twitter and I contacted Microsoft. It has been a month and I have yet to hear back from Twitter. And I've used Twitter to try to contact them, interestingly enough. But Microsoft, on the other hand, I was blown away. They first contacted me over the medium that I use to contact them, which was, as you should, Twitter. Um, they tried to address my situation through 140 characters. They couldn't. We moved to, private messaging, direct messaging. That was not enough. And then we moved to email, and subsequently, my situation has been resolved. But it moved through steps, and they were really good at addressing that. Can we fix this really easily? No. Okay. Can we fix this privately where we can get a little bit more to the meat of the matter that maybe I or they don't want to sort of make public? Not that they were upset that it would be, but maybe it's just more intimate conversation if it's done privately. And that didn't work. So we moved much beyond the 140 characters into the email realm. And yeah, they were quick. They addressed it within 12 hours. I was really, really impressed.
Hmm. That brings up a question and a problem, and like you know, we're both quite active in social media, and I'm sure you're as often contacting or tweeting to companies or posting questions to them, or at least watching what they're doing as I am here. And when customers, what I in my world, when I talk to companies, I say, the companies who are running contact centers, call centers here, and they look at their telephone lines, their email lines, their web chat, whatever they are, and now comes something called social media. From a company perspective, and typically it's an IT view of the world. It's a channel, right? So we put it into a channel, and we manage these channels with tools and technology and processes and everything there. But a customer really doesn't care about channels. Right, they don't even know what it is. They pick up their phone. Right, I've got the smartphone here, which is getting to be pretty powerful nowadays, and it does everything I need. And it can be doing an email, it can be doing a tweet, it can be doing Facebook. It can actually make phone calls occasionally as well. So a customer who starts their problem. In your case, you tweeted to Microsoft and said, "I've got a problem." Had they not responded in a certain amount of time, you may have then actually tried to find their email address and send them in an email. Maybe you would have even looked up a phone number and said, I've got to figure this out and get on a phone here. Companies obviously are having a really hard time of bringing those different pieces of communication together and seeing that as one person. So the issue started here. This is where my model that I'm building on context says a lot of things have happened before that final person responds to you on an email, perhaps, or finally picks it up and takes your issue and starts working it. They didn't see what was happening the 12 hours before, the barrage of tweets you've had with the social media department going on where they haven't been able to help you here. Have you seen any examples of companies that have been able to manage that? I mean, the Microsoft example is interesting. It sounded like you started on Twitter, moved to direct messaging, so a little bit less public there, and then you moved to email. Did you have the feeling when you were communicating with Microsoft that when you went to email, the previous conversation was known by the person who handled you, or did you have to start over again? Or have you got any other examples you've seen?
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good one. No, completely not. I could tell as soon as I hit email, I was dealing with a completely different department. It seemed like a form letter was which I was responding. It was a robo response.
Right.
They obviously enter name here, cut and paste response here, and name at bottom. Completely a different, even human tone from the social engagement I was having. It was funny when I first approached them, they were using, and I really advocate this, their initials as at the end of a tweet. So they were showing that they were human beings. It wasn't Microsoft I was talking to. It was Brian or Jill, or which right away human, because people don't build relationships with logos, they build them with human beings. And I was having a really good rapport with them. And as soon as I hit email, I was like, oh, this is how you're suddenly, it totally shifted gears. So I actually went back on Twitter and named the two people that I had been previously engaged with, not Microsoft, but the actual people. And they immediately got back to me, and we continued on and went back to email. But yeah, it was really almost jarring. And it was sort of like, okay, you're going to take me seriously here, but here it's now I'm in the world of process, not in the world of human beings. So yeah, I found that kind of be quite jarring. Thankfully, it all worked out, but there was certainly a disconnect that I could see, even just in the tone of the email versus what I was dealing with online.
It's the digital channel hopping, I'd like to call it. Instead of
Oh,
just
and absolutely, and it's just sort of how they social media is now not just customer service; it's sales, it's public relations, it's research, it's all these things. So siloing your different worlds of customer service is only going to hinder your and the customer's experience in learning about them you know in basically building you to a conclusion where you feel like you've been treated well throughout the entire process. It just feels herky jerky, which is exactly what happened with me with Microsoft.
and
I mean,
some
at the end of the day, I'm happy because they resolved my issue, but still, I'm having a conversation with you about it, aren't I? So it must not have been a good thing.
Well, you could think, when you were communicating with the Twitter folks there at Microsoft, you had already registered your issue, so they knew what your problem was. They
I
knew
had enough.
somewhere in the business they knew what the answer is. Microsoft is a big enough company, and they've got enough processes defined. And as soon as you hit the email channel, their process number 1222 just kicked in. It started out with a robo email going back and forth, but in the end, it solved your problem quite quickly. Why couldn't those social responders on the social team from Microsoft have access to that same process and say, before we even try direct messaging, before we even, try some of these things, we've got a very simple way you can do this. Go to this web page. This is going to do it for you. And if you get stuck, come back to me. If it's something that they know that they can't handle on social. I think what I see a lot in social media responses from companies, a lot of them they're trying really, really hard. And there's a lot of great people in social that are trying to handle customers' queries and problems and issues there. But often, as you said, they're siloed. Often they're very separate from the customer care part of the business, where all those processes, all those tools exist here. They're the social team. They're working in marketing. Maybe they're inching closer towards a customer care, but they're just not integrated very well. And they try hard. And as a customer, you're happy and you're talking to Brian and you're tweeting with them and you're feeling chummy. And at the end, when it was solved, you probably went back and said, you guys still did a great job. But at the end, you thought, well, why did it take 12 hours? I registered on Twitter, with you guys at Microsoft. somewhere in your business you could have kicked this in. We could have been done in two, and I could have gone back to the coffee shop and stood there for a minute being ignored by the cashier.
But we also, and I think, and I don't mean to be the pessimist here, but that's kind of the role I get to play once in a while, is we also don't understand what's happening behind the scenes. Their training could be absolutely fine. That person in email could have access to that conversation, but might not have been taught the value of understanding that conversation. The reason process 9 times out of 10 is in place is to streamline the experience so you can move on to the next person as quick as possible. So their stock response is just their way of going, okay, I've addressed it, moving on to the next thing. So one of the biggest stumbling blocks I've noticed in a few organizations is the why, explaining why this is important, having the value shared. Training, yeah, training's fine, but if you don't tell them or get them to understand what the value of that training is, it's a complete disconnect. You're missing out on a lot. So I think that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks for a lot of places.
Sounds like that training needs to maybe bring in a component of the situational awareness. So if that email responder actually really understood what was really going on, what had happened, if that email responder might not understand Twitter at all, might not even be on Twitter, might not have any interest in understand. That's fine.
Absolutely.
But they don't know maybe that there had been an exchange going on for an hour, a minute, or for 20 hours already. And you're right, they may have had access to that history there of your customer history may have had the whole Twitter exchange in it. They just didn't bother to take it into a reference before they sent out the robo-mail to you there.
Maybe the organization's like, here's the access, but really we are timing you on your responses and your turnaround time. That's another big thing with calls is like, okay, you need to do your quota for the day. So that might be driving them, not the customer service experience driving them. So that needs to be tapped into.
All right. So move from being the pessimist to maybe an optimist. If you had a tip, if you were going to talk to customer service organizations and you had a tip for them to say, what could they do? What one or two things might they want to do? Maybe we've already highlighted one here as well that maybe could improve how they interact with their clients, whether it's social media or anything else. What might you say to them?
I should say I'm a very happy person, by the way, Andrew. I'm not a pessimist generally. I want to say the good stories about customer service, and I do. It just doesn't seem to happen as much as I'd like. If anything, I think if I had a couple of tips to share, and I'll put one for digital and one for sort of offline. From the digital perspective, I would say social media doesn't and shouldn't ever be put on a pedestal. Social media is not a cure-all for what ails your company. If your customer service is terrible, social media is just going to put a spotlight on it like you cannot believe. It will show every crack in your process. So there's a lot of companies that look at social media going, oh, if we're just on social media and I put out a tweet, it's going to go out to the world. So everybody saw it. You have 7 followers. Nobody saw anything. So you have to understand that it's about the relationship building online. Social media is just the technology behind it. From an actual human interaction standpoint, face to face, be human. The little things like eye contact, smiling, not assuming that the person that's mad is mad at you. He could be just mad at his day. These are things that I cannot believe and shocks me on a day-to-day basis is never done. Eye contact is probably my biggest stumbling block. It's shocking how many people just don't connect with them on that level. And I've walked out from businesses feeling completely different based solely on eye contact. So I think that can never be ignored.
I think those are some really good points. And it's interesting when you talk about eye contact and just generally interacting, in a positive, even if you've had a bad day, that's true. I lived, being an American and moved to Germany 20 something years ago now. Germany back then was very well known, even amongst their own people would say, it was a service desert. Service was just not something you got. You got what you wanted. However, it came to you there. You went to the shop, you bought it, and you went home. And it was never a good experience. There was never a smile. There was rarely a thank you. That was coming, and that's very generalized. I want to say that's always the way it is. It has improved a lot over the time, but there's still very much this. I'm here to do my job. I don't really I'm not too concerned about you. I've got to do something here to get it over with so I can finish my shift and go on. Like you said, the person behind the cashier at the coffee shop, they're just there to fulfill their whatever dollar an hour job that they're there for 4 hours before they go back to school in the afternoon, and they don't really take any there's no respect they're bringing to the job there, and I think that's unfortunate. And it's going to kill some businesses, right? It's going to drive away the customers. I know it's done it to me. There's certain shops and places I just won't go anymore because I just don't feel good. And if I don't feel good in my exchange with a company there, I'm going to walk away with a bad experience. I think we could go on here for a really long time with a lot of questions, but I think we may have to circle back around for another interview. And I actually, you coming from the ministry there and from Canada, I think we may have to come back at another time and talk about some of your experiences of how the ministry is interacting with customers and what they might be doing, because that's something that I approach occasionally here throughout Europe in different government organizations and some of them are regional and local civic groups here that are very challenged, particularly in this new digital world, the online world, of how to interact with people. And they're very scared, they're very nervous, and there's certain restrictions, of course, around privacy and things like that that come into play as well. But maybe I'll have to come back another time and talk about that one there.
Absolutely.
I've got, part of the show is I'd like to give a chance for you to talk about or mention some people that have played a role in your world in customer service or customer experience. I call them the CX shout-outs here. Have you got a couple of 2 or 3 people that you'd like to bring up and, like I say, bring them up behind the curtains and mention them, give them that moment of fame on my podcast?
Sure. There's a few actually. 3 I immediately come to mind. Kate Nasser would certainly be one. Very active in the social community, but she's got a Google Plus community around people skills, and I think she really puts a human element to, as I've tried to relay, is a big deal with me. So she's certainly been a great supporter of me, and I of her over the years. So she's fantastic, Kate Nasser. Marcia Collier, certainly a very high-level customer service person. She's amazing. She's written books. She's also co-founder of the Twitter hashtag #CusServe, which is something that I've been passionately following and contributing to for many years now. I highly recommend her. Ted Coyne is another one, and he's a little bit more, I'd say, more leaning toward the leadership aspect of business, less the customer service, but there certainly is some overlap. So Ted's been really someone I pay attention to when he tweets and the content that he's sharing. So those are definitely my top 3.
Wow, you come in with that's a heavy team. if we were putting up a team of customer service versus another team of customer experience, they would be between Marcia, Kate, and Ted. You've named some of the heavyweights. I'll make sure I'll add all of their names in the show notes here for those who want to follow up. And as Russell mentioned, a hashtag. I know some of my listeners here are not very affine when it comes to social media and Twitter. If you're on Twitter, if you happen to be following Britney Spears or whoever it might be on Twitter there, hashtags are a great thing you can search for. You can follow them. If you put in the hashtag with a CustServe, CUSTSERV, everything in Twitter needs to be a bit shorter, stands for customer service there. You can follow this hashtag and pick up tweets from around the world, which is how I found Russell here and all the others and some of the others he's mentioned here as well. People like-minded, sharing experiences, sharing publications, referencing blog posts, speeches of people, videos, and the rest there. It's a great source for some experience there. Russell, I can't believe the time's already up here, but I really want to thank you for joining us here on the CX404. This has been really fun, and I think I see there's reasons to come back together again and talk to. Can you tell people how they can find out more about you and where they can learn more what you're doing?
Absolutely. Probably the best way to get in contact with me is on Twitter, Russ LOL, RUSSLOL. That's where I live and breathe. Usually is a lot on Twitter, but I've also certainly launched a bit on Google Plus. I have a community I've just built around customer service that I please invite everybody to join and share their experiences, whether it's good, whether it's bad. That's how we learn to do better. And of course, the Upsell, theupsell.com is my home away from home for customer service discussion.
Brilliant. And I'll make sure all of those get referenced in the show notes for the folks that weren't writing it down while driving their cars or at their lunchtime chewing on a sandwich there.
Please be safe.
Take safe. So thank you for participating here today, and I will be watching you. And the Upsell is a blog that I've been watching for quite a while. It's got some great content there, and I hope people can go by and check it out and see if they can find some nuggets that they can take advantage of. Thank you, Russel.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you for spending your lunchtime today with Customer Experience 404. You can find out more about the Customer Experience 404 at the website, www.serviceplease.de. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher. You can as well sign up for our newsletter so you never miss a show. If you have any comments or suggestions for the show, please email us at andrew@serviceplease.de. Or you can reach me anytime at serviceplease20 over on Twitter. Thank you.